What's up, guys? Air Codes here, out on another walk, talking about switching from PHP to Ruby on Rails, or Laravel, I guess, to Ruby on Rails. So last night, I spent a lot of time starting off the process of creating an app. And there's some things, just kind of hit on yesterday's topic of conversation. There's some things I wish I knew last night before trying to do this. And basically that is that when you go to create a Rails application, I feel like it's a lot better if you know what you want before you start than trying to change things as you go. So I'll give you a case in point. So I think yesterday or the other day I hit on it saying that, I'm a MySQL guy, right? So when you start a Rails app, it defaults to SQLite as the database. And for me, SQLite's just not going to do it. And it doesn't make sense really for a scalable app, and as something grows. So to me, I'd rather just get used to, using a MySQL database, because that's most likely what I would do in production anyways. So, and there's a flag, right? So when you go to start a new Rails app, so let's say, you would say Rails new, let's call it my app. Then you would give it a flag -D and then say MySQL. And when Rails configures and sets up, it'll set up all the correct pieces in place to use MySQL. All right. Now, the first time I did it, I didn't realize that, right? I didn't know that it was going to use SQLite to start. I thought it would just default to MySQL, but it doesn't. So when I ran it the first time, I didn't have MySQL. So I tried to go into the config file. There's a YAML file that does all your configuration and stuff, right? And try to change that and try to get it to connect to MySQL. And I couldn't. I don't know what was wrong, why it wouldn't connect. But I couldn't get it to do the right thing. So, because it's the beginning of a project, all right, well, let's just delete it. Delete the project, start again with the flag. Start again with the flag, worked great. Aside from the fact that I had to change one thing out. And this is important because this goes to the whole Rails and Laravel thing. So when I installed Ruby a few months ago, I mentioned this in one of my videos. I said that my version of Mac OS is so old and is not upgradable that certain things like Mize and a few other things can't be updated on. I can't get the latest versions of them. And so what's happening is it tried to compile them from the source code rather than doing it with Homebrew, and it was a mess. And then it messed up PHP, it messed up MySQL, it messed up everything. So what ended up happening was I had to change, because I lost all my test database data. Well, I didn't lose it. I have it in backup files, but it's not important for me to restore it. But I had to something was going on with using root as a username, and it didn't want to let me add no password. It forced me to put a password in. I don't know why, but it did. So now when I start a project, or if I want to connect to MySQL, I annoyingly need to put a password in for root user. And so that was easy in Rails. I went in, I put the password into the YAML file. Now, again, I would not do that in production. I would use an environment file, a .env, put your variables in there. So with that environment file, it does not come out of the box with Rails. So that's something to know. That's a big deal. It's pretty easy to make one. But it is something to know because something like Laravel does that. Now, that being said, just for comparison's sake, I tried to fire up Laravel application last night as well. And I haven't done so since I had that problem. And so try to set my SQL as the database to walk me through the installer and couldn't connect. Obviously I know why, right? Because the password and all that stuff. Changed all that in the environment stuff, cleared the cache, did everything I possibly could, and the application still won't connect. I don't know why, but again, I'm not trying to learn Laravel. I was trying to learn Ruby, so put that off to the side. I didn't want to fight with it anymore. So that was something that I noticed. Then later on, so I got the first part of my project working, right? With it looks like hell, which will lead into the next portion here, but I got it so that it can take in, data. It could take in files too. There was a package that AI suggested. I don't remember what it's called, but a package that allows you to easily attach files and stuff, because what I'm building needs files to be, uploaded. So that was all well and good. It did it pretty good. Made a mistake here and there. Again, I was using the help of AI, so sometimes it helps, sometimes it hurts. But AI had gotten the name of something wrong. It took a little while for me to find where AI went wrong. But it did. And it was working just fine. Now, I told you, it looks like hell. And here's where things kind of took a turn for where we are now and wasn't so good. I'm trying to add, because it looks so bad, I just wanted to add Bootstrap to the application. Again, I know there's a lot of Tailwind people out there. I don't really use Tailwind. Probably should use it more often. But I'm definitely more familiar with Bootstrap, and I like things like they have things like the Bootstrap cards and the navigation bars and all that other stuff. And I don't think Tailwind has that, at least for free anyways. So for me, it's like, I want to use all these things. So I want to use Bootstrap. So I ran the command to add it to my project. I tried to start it and it didn't work. And it was like, okay, well, why? So again, you go to AI to see, because again, it's faster than trying to read through. Like Bootstrap doesn't have a lot of documentation for adding Bootstrap to your project. So like they suggested using a gem and pulling it in that way. And that didn't work for the Rails application. It denied it for some reason. So instead I had to put the actual gem name into my gem file in my project and then run the bundle command. So that brought in everything that I needed. Then I needed to go to my just JavaScript file and add an import statement. And I also needed to go to my CSS file and add an import statement, which I did, but then it didn't work. So then I was getting some sort of error that I needed to have an SCSS file. So I said, all right, fine. We'll add the SCSS file instead, along with the CSS file, shouldn't matter. Again, still wouldn't work. Try pre-compiling, still wouldn't work. So, couldn't get it to add that way. So I went through AI, tried a bunch of different things. I deleted the main CSS file in lieu of keeping the SCSS file. Still nothing. So trying to add it to the project was really hard, and I actually never got it added. Then this morning, tested a little bit more, in my Windows environment. So that was my Mac environment. In my Windows environment, I tested it. And I found out that there's also a flag for the CSS that you want to use when you set up the project. So I told you -D was the database. I think -C is your CSS, and you just put -C bootstrap. And when it creates the project for you, it adds all that. So that was nice, which is why I'm getting to the point that I made earlier, that if you are going to start a Ruby project, try to know when you first get started the things that you're going to want to pull in, what type of database that you're going to want, what type of CSS you're going to want, what kind of JavaScript, are you going to pull in, I don't know, jQuery or whatever it might be, right? Try to know that when you first start the project, because Rails will configure it all correctly for you. And then you don't have the problems like I had last night trying to add Bootstrap. So that's a takeaway. Now, I will say that this, I think, would be a point for Laravel. Even though I've been having the problem with the database connection, that's really, kind of my fault. And then I could switch that in the command line and get rid of that password. That's just me being lazy, but I also am in the middle of a project that I'm using that database with, so I don't want to screw with that at all, because that would be worse than that project, which is a big one for me, getting lost or whatever it is. So we'll just kind of let's keep the sleeping dogs lie. We'll play on the Windows machine where the project really isn't stationed. But I will say that's a point in Laravel's corner, because I think I talked about Laravel Breeze the other day. Like, there's packages that you can add to Laravel, and they are simple. Run one command, it updates your project, and it works just fine. So, and that pertains to a new Laravel project, because here's the thing. I've noticed too that Laravel does change a lot. Possibly a lot more than Ruby on Rails. I haven't been developing that much Ruby on Rails, so I haven't developed it that long, but I think, Ruby on Rails is older than Laravel, and I believe there's 8 versions of Ruby on Rails. And I want to say Laravel, I think it's like 10, version 10 maybe. It's been around for a short amount of time, and when Laravel changes stuff, they're breaking changes for a lot of things that they do. So I would say Ruby maybe has problems with gem files, which I noticed with Bootstrap last night. But Laravel has problems as well with breaking changes if you want to upgrade. So not so much that it breaks just for no reason, kind of like Node packages do. Oh, Node. More or less that there's breaking changes if you want to take your current project and upgrade it to the new version of Laravel, which, again, happens in anything, right? If we started on Python, is it Python 2 and Python 3? Some people are still using Python 2. There's a Python in Python 2. I don't know, I'm not in the Python world, but I know that there's a newer version of Python that a lot of people still can't switch over to because there's so many inconsistencies between the two spots of it, So I think, that's important to note as well. But with a framework, in general, I would say you don't want to introduce too many breaking changes when somebody updates their stuff, because especially with security updates and all those different things. But again, that all depends on, if you stray too far away from the base Laravel application and all the base stuff that Laravel uses. So I don't know. But that is my story for last night and early today. That in the world of Ruby on Rails versus PHP, it's a lot more important when you're creating a Rails application to know the details of your project and the technologies of your project when you first get going over Laravel, because Laravel's a lot easier to configure and add stuff as you go. And that could be I'm just more used to it. I don't know. But it seems like I said, pretty good developer, and I can, find my way through things pretty good, especially with the help of AI. But sitting there being like, I don't understand why this isn't working. It was, God, what was the name of the package I was getting? It's something to do with Sprocket, or the replacement for Sprocket or something like that. I don't know. I didn't have Sprocket in my project, and AI kept saying, like, remove Sprocket. It's not there. It's not freaking there, man. I don't know what to tell you. So, anyways, so far, some bumps in the road. There are things I really, really like about Ruby on Rails. There's some things I just don't understand, and thank God that AI is there, because I wouldn't know what the syntax is and what these things are. But again, that's to be expected. I'm not really a Ruby developer. I've just, I've played with it a couple times and jumped right into Rails because that's going to be the spot where it's going to make the most sense for me. But yeah, so there's things I like, there's things I don't. I think the good so far is outweighing the bad, because, getting set up and configured, I think that's a nightmare in any language that you kind of work with. Let me start on C#. I remember a build number being off on a project for C#. It was the most frustrating thing. It was a Docker file. It was all in Docker, and then like the build number in the Docker file didn't match the build number. And it's just, God, what a nightmare. So again, configuration sucks. So I can't fairly be like, okay, based on the configuration process of things. I mean, Laravel is definitely easier than Ruby was to get up and going with what I wanted, because PHP is easier to install. I mean, if you have Chocolatey on your machine, if you're Windows, you have Chocolatey, Choco install PHP. PHP is installed, or you can use XAMPP, which will give you PHP, MySQL. There's a nice installer for it. It'll give you Apache. Like, that's pretty awesome. And then again for Mac, they don't have XAMPP. They have MAMP, which I never really used because the PHP server is good enough. But again, brew install, as long as you have homebrew, brew install PHP, does it all. Same thing with Laravel on both of them. They're pretty easy to do. Ruby was a little more difficult on Windows. But yeah, I can't really say that either one was too bad installing. Now configuring the project for the first time, you don't know what you don't know. And so that's kind of where I was last night. So hopefully I can get project being made to get a little more going with how I wanted the project to work and how I want it to look, and maybe a little more with, because like I said, I've worked with Eloquent before. I don't even know what it's called. And Ruby, you get to work a little bit more, pulling different stuff from the database and all that. So we'll see. But anyways, that's part 3 of the vlog. Getting started with a project, what you should know before you start a Ruby on Rails project, as compared to Laravel. So, all right, guys. Again, leave a comment down below if you have questions, if you want me to cover something else. But like I said, pretty consistent here with these videos, and try to keep posting them. And for all 6 people that are watching right now, thanks for watching. And hey, we'll catch you the next time. Again, this is Eric Codes. Have a good one.